by the long 1970s, I mean, historical developments cannot be clearly bracketed. It started on this date and ended on that date. That's the way how cultural processes work. That's why I think the expression, the long 1970s, is a felicitous expression. What you're thinking of is really the period from the last years of the 60s, like 1969, when things changed, the years leading up to martial law. And then, of course, the whole martial law period up to 1986. There's a cultural break, as it were, that's very sharp, meaning to say the rise of the Vietnam War, the rise of communism in the world, the spread of global anti-Americanism. That was the time it took place. Writers like me started out by reading Ernest Hemingway, William Faulkner. Then when we come to the beginning of the 70s, you are already thinking of finding examples of socialist, realist literature because that was what became politically important. It's almost like one day you're reading John Updike because that was what you like, and the following day you are reading Maxim Gorky even if you don't really enjoy him because that's socialist writing. That's really kind of a sharp break. I was influenced by like Franz Kafka, kind of the European expression. Short story was really the form that I was interested in because I felt comfortable with. So I wrote stories that are, for most readers, very obscure.
What's your motivation then? Why were you driven to write?
What involved me in the student movement, I saw because of an interest of mine in Freeman. I was the one who covered student demonstrations and wrote articles about the student movement. In fact, I wrote a series at the time because it was something interesting. I remember writing a series where I did profiles of the main student leaders in Cebu. One was an article on John Pagosara because he was studying at USJR at the time, and he was active in the student movement. That was already the time of the rise of new journalism. New journalism almost like you do personal accounts of historical events. That became kind of a trend in journalism where you completely abandon supposedly objective, but you write articles with a specific viewpoint of the one writing it.
That was 1972. Were your write-ups the reason for when you were detained?
This was before, probably I started writing for the Freeman 69, 17, around that time. So I was, in a sense, the one who wrote about the student protests. It was only later, the period of the student activism, that kind of I made a shift. In fact, the last short story I wrote was the year that martial law was declared, titled In the Beginning of the War. The reference is to the war that's going to take place in the Philippines because of what was going on. It was set in Mindanao. But that was because the times had changed. What's remarkable there, and my experience is common to writers of that period, that was almost like you're writing this kind of literature this year and the following year is now different. That was really a dramatic cultural split. I think the one that really spurred it for many people is the Vietnam. The thing about that detention is a military detention. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how long you will be there. I remember there was a lady PC officer who was the editor of their publication and actually asked me to write the editorial or something, in a sense, ghostwriting, and brought along a typewriter so I could type for this PC publication. I mean, of course, she would not ask me because she knew I was a journalist. In the last 2 weeks of my stay, they decided to allow day pass for detainees. I got a day pass and left the camp together with this corporal. And then he kind of whispered to me, said, "Sir, is it all right if I leave and we just meet at 𝗪𝗵𝗂? We'll just meet there before 4 o'clock and then we'll walk back." I remember Ed De La Torre, he was telling this story that he was being interviewed by the representative of Amnesty International when he was detained. And he was telling her these really funny stories about life in detention. And representative of the Amnesty International said, "But Ed, we can't use what you're telling us. You make prison life seem so much fun."
What did you write during that long period? That was the most important.
When we think of the martial law period, we generally simplify it as, the dark years of the dictatorship. Yet on the other hand, that period is the most productive and culturally dynamic period in Philippine history. That was when people rediscovered the importance of popular culture. There's a cultural revolution, but not of the ideological type. In a sense, ang interest was what was local, what was ethnic, what was popular. I grew up in high school and even after college. You don't bring a copy of Bisaya to school, you'd be laughed at. I mean, these were magazines that everybody read. And Bisaya was bakya. I mean, you don't want to be seen as bakya. You want to say that somebody kind of westernized, educated, cosmopolitan. The 70s was an important chapter of that story. Because 70s, you had the rediscovery of local heritage, local language, local culture in the face of Western domination.
So we are now asking you regarding the Visayan identity.
We are really a maritime people. We're not a